Rebecca Martinez, a 26-year-old nurse from Dallas, Texas, gives birth to her premature daughter after a complicated pregnancy. When she visits the NICU to see her baby for the first time, she notices something deeply unsettling. Her newborn daughter seems terrified whenever she speaks. Dr. Harrison, the attending physician, acts strangely nervous around Rebecca, avoiding eye contact and giving evasive answers about her baby's condition. As Rebecca investigates further, she uncovers a horrifying medical conspiracy that puts both her life and her daughter's in immediate danger. What she discovers about the hospital's secret practices will forever change how she views the medical system she once trusted completely. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I never thought the sound of my own voice could terrify my newborn daughter. It was March 15th, 2024, a cold Tuesday morning in Dallas when I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. "Mrs. Martinez, you can see your baby now," the NICU nurse said through the phone. My heart pounded as I hung up. After 3 weeks of recovery from an emergency C-section at 32 weeks, I was finally going to hold my daughter, Emma. The walk down the sterile hospital corridor felt endless. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the mint green walls of Methodist Dallas Medical Center. My hands shook as I pushed through the heavy double doors marked Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, authorized personnel only. The NICU hit me like a wave of overwhelming sensations. The constant beeping of monitors, the whoosh of ventilators, the soft crying of tiny babies fighting for their lives. Rows of incubators lined the room, each one containing a fragile little human no bigger than a doll. The air smelled of disinfectant mixed with that distinct hospital smell that never quite leaves your nose. "Mrs. Martinez?" A tall, thin man in a white coat approached me. His nameplate read, "Dr. Harrison, Neonatology." He had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, but something about his demeanor seemed off. His hands fidgeted with his stethoscope, and he wouldn't quite meet my gaze. "I'm Dr. Harrison. I've been caring for Emma since her birth." "How is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Is she going to be okay?" Dr. Harrison's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. She's doing as well as can be expected for a 32-week preemie. Come, let me show you to her." We walked past several incubators until we stopped at one in the corner. There she was, my beautiful Emma, all 5 pounds, 2 ounces of her. She had my dark hair and what looked like her father's nose. Tubes and wires snaked around her tiny body, connecting her to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical precision. Can I touch her?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Of course," Dr. Harrison said, but his voice sounded strained. "Just be gentle. Premature babies can be very sensitive to stimulation." I reached into the incubator through the small circular openings and gently placed my hand on Emma's chest. She was so warm, so tiny, so perfect. "Hi, baby girl," I whispered softly. "Mommy's here now." The moment the words left my mouth, Emma's entire body went rigid. Her little arms trembled, and her breathing became rapid and shallow. The monitors around her began beeping more frantically. "What's happening?" I asked, panic rising in my voice. "Why is she doing that?" Dr. Harrison quickly moved to check the monitors, his face pale. "Sometimes babies react to new voices," he said quickly, but I could hear the uncertainty in his tone. "It's probably nothing to worry about." "Nothing to worry about," I repeated, my voice getting louder. "Look at her. She's terrified." As my voice rose, Emma's trembling became more violent. Her tiny face contorted in what looked like fear, and she began making small, distressed sounds. It was heartbreaking and utterly bewildering. "Please, Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Harrison said, his voice tight with what sounded like... Was that fear? Could you keep your voice down? The other babies? I stared at him in disbelief. My own daughter was having some kind of distress response to my voice, and he was worried about disturbing other patients? Something wasn't right here. "I want to speak to another doctor," I said firmly, but quietly. "I want a second opinion about what's happening to my daughter." Dr. Harrison's face went completely white. His hands were actually shaking now as he adjusted his glasses. That won't be necessary. I'm sure Emma will adjust to your presence over time. Perhaps we should end this visit for today and try again tomorrow." End the visit? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I just got here. I haven't seen my daughter in 3 weeks." As I spoke, Emma's distress seemed to increase. The monitors were now beeping almost continuously, and a nurse rushed over to check on her. "What's her voice doing to the baby?" The nurse asked Dr. Harrison quietly, but I heard every word. Her voice? What did that mean? Why would my voice specifically be causing this reaction? Dr. Harrison shot the nurse a sharp look. Nothing. The baby is just overstimulated. Mrs. Martinez was just leaving. No, I wasn't, I said, my voice steel cold despite the fear coursing through my veins. I'm not going anywhere until someone explains to me why my newborn daughter is terrified of her own mother's voice. The look that passed between Dr. Harrison and the nurse was loaded with meaning I couldn't interpret. But I knew one thing for certain. They were hiding something from me. Dr. Harrison, I said slowly, watching his face carefully. What aren't you telling me about my daughter's condition? He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the continued beeping of Emma's monitors and her soft, distressed whimpering. I've been a pediatric nurse for 5 years. I know when medical professionals are being evasive, and every instinct I had was screaming that something was very, very wrong here. What would you do if your own baby seemed afraid of you? If the doctors treating your child were clearly hiding something important? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. If you're invested in finding out what's really happening to Emma and why Dr. Harrison is acting so strangely, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what Rebecca discovers next. Because what I found in Emma's medical records that night would reveal a conspiracy so horrifying. It would make me question everything I thought I knew about the hospital where I'd trusted them to save my daughter's life. The walk back to my hospital room felt like a death march. Every step echoed in the empty corridor as I replayed the scene in the NICU over and over in my mind. Emma's terrified trembling, Dr. Harrison's evasive answers, the nurse's strange comment about my voice. None of it made sense. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's tiny face contorting in fear when I spoke. What kind of mother has a baby who's afraid of her? The thought ate at me like acid. At 3 a.m., I made a decision. I was going to find out what was really happening to my daughter, even if it meant breaking some rules. Using my employee badge, I accessed the hospital's computer system from the nursing station on my floor. As a pediatric nurse at this hospital, I had legitimate access to patient records, technically. Looking at my own daughter's file was in a gray area, but I didn't care about technicalities anymore. What I found in Emma's medical chart made my blood run cold. There were entries I'd never been told about. Experimental procedures, drug trials, and a notation that made me physically sick. Patient enrolled in Study Protocol 47B, Auditory Conditioning Response in Neonates. My hands shook as I clicked deeper into the file. The protocol details were hidden behind several security barriers, but I knew the system well enough to navigate around them. Study Protocol 47B was a research project studying infant response to specific voice patterns and frequencies. The goal was to understand how premature babies' neurological development could be influenced by controlled auditory stimuli during their most vulnerable developmental period. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the list of test subjects, 12 premature babies born in the last 6 months. Emma was number 11, and according to the records, the conditioning involved exposing the babies to their mother's recorded voices, paired with mild electrical stimulation designed to create negative association responses. I had to read that line 3 times before it sank in. They were training babies to be afraid of their own mother's voices using some form of aversion therapy. I scrolled frantically through the documentation, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake the entire floor. There were detailed notes about optimal conditioning periods and response intensity measurements. Clinical, cold language describing psychological manipulation of newborn babies. Emma's specific entry showed she had been conditioned for 14 days using recordings of my voice that had been taken during my prenatal appointments. Recordings I had no idea they'd made. Every time they played my voice, they administered what they called mild corrective stimulation. They were torturing my baby. And they'd been doing it for 2 weeks. The study was funded by something called the Behavioral Modification Research Institute, with Dr. Harrison listed as the principal investigator. The goal, according to the abstract, was to explore early intervention techniques for managing difficult parent-child bonding situations in high-risk family dynamics. High-risk family dynamics? What did that even mean? I scrolled to Emma's intake assessment and found my answer. In my file, there were flags I'd never seen before. Single mother. Low socioeconomic status. Previous mental health treatment. referring to the brief counseling I'd sought after my ex-boyfriend left when I told him I was pregnant. High probability of inadequate parenting capacity. They had profiled me, decided I was an unfit mother before Emma was even born, and they were conditioning my daughter to reject me as some kind of sick preventive measure. I printed everything. Every page, every study protocol, every note. The printer seemed impossibly loud in the quiet hospital, but I didn't care. I needed evidence. As the pages compiled, I noticed something else that made my stomach drop. Of the 12 babies in the study, 3 were listed as transferred to alternative care arrangements after successful conditioning periods. Transferred to alternative care arrangements. They had taken babies away from their mothers and given them to other families. Families that presumably met their standards for adequate parenting capacity. I thought about the nurse's reaction earlier. The way Dr. Harrison couldn't meet my eyes. The strange questions I'd been asked during my prenatal visits that seemed unrelated to medical care. Questions about my support system, my living situation, my relationship status. They had been evaluating me from the beginning. And they had decided I wasn't good enough to raise my own daughter. But they had made one crucial mistake. They didn't know that I understood their system, that I could navigate their security protocols, that I had 5 years of experience documenting everything. I tucked the printed papers into my purse and walked purposefully back toward the NICU. It was 4 a.m., the shift change period when security was lightest and most staff were focused on patient handoffs. The NICU was dimly lit with only 2 nurses on duty, both busy with other patients. I moved quietly to Emma's incubator and looked down at my sleeping daughter. She looked peaceful now, her tiny chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the ventilator. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," I whispered as quietly as I could. "Mommy didn't know what they were doing to you. But I'm going to fix this." I took photos of every machine connected to Emma, every medication label, every chart notation visible from outside her incubator. Then I did something that could have gotten me arrested. I carefully disconnected one of the non-essential monitoring devices and slipped the memory card into my pocket. If there were recordings of the conditioning sessions, I was going to find them. As I turned to leave, I nearly collided with Dr. Harrison. He was standing right behind me, his face a mask of cold fury. "Mrs. Martinez," he said quietly, his voice carrying an unmistakable threat. "What are you doing in here at this hour?" My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. "Visiting my daughter." I couldn't sleep. His eyes searched my face, looking for signs that I knew more than I was letting on. Hospital visiting hours are clearly posted. The NICU is closed to family members between midnight and 6 a.m., except in emergencies. "Seeing my baby is an emergency to me," I replied evenly. Dr. Harrison stepped closer, invading my personal space in a way that felt deliberately intimidating. "Mrs. Martinez, I think we need to have a conversation about Emma's care plan. Why don't you come to my office?" It wasn't a request. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you realized the people you trusted were working against you? How far would you go to protect your child? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see how Rebecca fights back against this horrifying conspiracy, make sure you're subscribed to our channel with notifications turned on. The conclusion of this story will show you exactly how far a mother will go to save her baby. Because Dr. Harrison thought he was dealing with a powerless, overwhelmed new mother. He had no idea he was about to face a pediatric nurse who knew exactly how to expose what they'd been doing, and I wasn't going down without a fight. "No," I said firmly, taking a step back from Dr. Harrison. "I'm not going anywhere with you. If you want to talk, we can talk right here." His face darkened. "Mrs. Martinez, I think you're overwrought. New mothers often experience anxiety that can manifest as paranoid thoughts about their baby's care. Perhaps we should discuss adjusting your medication." The condescending tone, the veiled threat about my mental health, the way he positioned himself between me and the exit, everything confirmed what I'd found in those files. This man saw me as an obstacle to be managed, not a mother seeking answers about her child. "I know about Study Protocol 47B, I said quietly, watching his reaction. Dr. Harrison went completely still. For a moment, the only sounds were the NICU machines and the distant hum of the hospital's ventilation system. "I don't know what you think you know," he said finally, "but I'd be very careful about making accusations you can't substantiate." 14 days of auditory conditioning, I continued, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Recordings of my voice paired with electrical stimulation. Training my daughter to fear me so you could justify taking her away. The color drained from his face. Mrs. Martinez, you're clearly experiencing postpartum psychosis. I'm going to call security and have you evaluated by our psychiatric team. He reached for his phone, but I was faster. Go ahead, I said, pulling out my own phone. Call them. But first, let me call Channel 8 News. I'm sure they'd be very interested in a story about a hospital conducting secret psychological experiments on premature babies. Dr. Harrison froze, his hand halfway to his pocket. You see, Dr. Harrison, you made a critical error. You assumed I was just another overwhelmed single mother who wouldn't ask questions. But I'm a pediatric nurse. I know how to read medical charts, navigate your computer systems, and document everything. I held up my phone, showing him photos of Emma's files. I have copies of the entire Protocol 47B documentation. The funding sources, the participant lists, the conditioning methods, all of it. You accessed confidential medical records illegally, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I accessed my daughter's medical records, I corrected. As her mother and as a hospital employee with legitimate system access. What you did to her, that's the illegal part. Dr. Harrison glanced around the NICU, probably calculating whether any of the other staff had overheard our conversation. Even if what you're saying were true, no one would believe you. You're a single mother with a history of mental health treatment. Your credibility would be questioned. You're right, I said, moving closer to Emma's incubator. My credibility might be questioned, but the families of the other 11 babies in your study, they might have different credibility levels, especially the Johnsons. You know, Senator Johnson's daughter who had premature twins last month. I imagine she'd be very interested to know why her babies were enrolled in your experimental program. The mention of the senator's daughter hit him like a physical blow. I had recognized the name from the participant list, Sarah Johnson, daughter of Texas State Senator Robert Johnson, one of the most vocal advocates for children's rights in the state legislature. What do you want? Dr. Harrison asked quietly. I want my daughter transferred to Children's Medical Center immediately, I said. I want all conditioning protocols stopped. I want the memory cards from all monitoring equipment that recorded her sessions. And I want a written statement acknowledging what was done to her. I can't do that. The study has institutional approval. There are protocols to follow. Then I guess we'll let the media sort it out, I said, starting to dial a number. Wait. Dr. Harrison ran his hands through his hair, looking suddenly older than his years. You don't understand the bigger picture here. We're trying to prevent child abuse, to identify problematic family situations before they become dangerous. By torturing babies? I asked incredulously. By training them to reject their mothers? By creating early intervention opportunities, he insisted. Some of these mothers, they're not equipped to raise these children. The conditioning creates a window for placement with more suitable families. The casual way he said it, more suitable families, made my skin crawl. You mean wealthier families? Families that meet your personal standards for worthiness. He didn't deny it. Dr. Harrison, I said, my voice deadly calm, you have exactly 10 minutes to begin Emma's transfer paperwork before I start making phone calls. And if I find out you've tried to continue this program with any other babies, I will personally ensure that you never practice medicine again. You're making a mistake, he said. Emma will be better off in a stable home environment. You're young, you're alone, you don't have the resources to give her the life she deserves. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. You want to know what kind of life I'm going to give my daughter? I'm going to raise her to ask questions, to stand up for herself, to never let anyone convince her she's not worthy of love and respect. I'm going to teach her that fighting for what's right is more important than following rules made by people who abuse their power. I walked to Emma's incubator and gently placed my hand through the opening, touching her tiny fingers. This time I didn't speak. I just let her feel my presence, my love, my commitment to protecting her. And I'm going to tell her about the day her mother took down an entire corrupt research program because no one hurts her baby and gets away with it. Dr. Harrison stood there for a moment longer, then walked away without another word. 20 minutes later, a different doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen from Children's Medical Center, arrived to supervise Emma's transfer. Ms. Martinez? Dr. Chen approached with a warm smile and clear, honest eyes. I understand you've requested a transfer for your daughter. Can you tell me why? I handed her a copy of the Protocol 47B documentation. She read it in silence, her expression growing more horrified with each page. She shook her head. This is unconscionable. We'll take excellent care of Emma, and I want you to know that the administration at Children's has already begun an investigation based on your documentation. 3 weeks later, Emma and I went home together. She's 6 months old now, healthy and strong, and she smiles when she hears my voice. The conditioning effects wore off completely within days of being removed from the program. Dr. Harrison lost his medical license. Study Protocol 47B was shut down, and all participating families were notified and offered counseling services. Senator Johnson led a legislative investigation that resulted in new protections for vulnerable patients in research settings. As for me, I left Methodist Dallas Medical Center and now work as a patient advocate, helping families navigate situations where they feel powerless against medical institutions. Because I learned something important that night in the NICU. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who think they know what's best for your family better than you do. Emma is sleeping peacefully in her crib as I write this, surrounded by toys and books and all the love I have to give her. She'll never remember the first few weeks of her life, but I'll never forget them. They taught me that being a good mother sometimes means being willing to fight the entire system to protect your child. And if anyone ever tries to hurt my daughter again, they'll discover that there's nothing more fierce than a mother who's already been through hell and come out stronger. Have you ever had to fight for what was right even when the odds seemed impossible? How far would you go to protect someone you love? Share your story in the comments below. If this story inspired you or made you think about the importance of advocating for yourself and your family, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with others. Sometimes the most important stories are the ones about ordinary people doing extraordinary things when it matters most. Because every child deserves a mother who will move heaven and earth to keep them safe. And every mother deserves to know that her love is enough, no matter what anyone else tries to tell her.